When someone does this, they're completely obsessed with you, according to Freud. Why do certain individuals appear cold and detached precisely when they're most deeply in love? The father of psychoanalysis had an explanation that will revolutionize how you understand relationships forever. Picture being around someone who, instead of declaring eternal devotion, becomes suddenly overprotective, almost possessive, or starts performing seemingly meaningless gestures repeatedly just for you. According to Freud, these behaviors conceal such profound love that the unconscious mind must discover indirect ways to express it because the intensity of emotion terrifies them. When the ego feels exposed before overwhelming love, it triggers defense mechanisms that transform passion into seemingly contradictory actions. Today, you'll discover how to recognize the 6 most powerful signals that reveal authentic love, according to Freud. The first signal you're about to uncover is so subtle that 90% of people completely miss it. The initial sign that someone is desperately in love with you occurs when they seem to push you away on the surface, yet cannot detach themselves from you in reality. Freud labeled this mechanism reaction formation, where the unconscious transforms an overly intense impulse into its apparent opposite. Imagine someone who is normally expressive and affectionate suddenly becoming more reserved when you're present, but simultaneously seeking every excuse to remain in your orbit. They claim to want distance, yet respond instantly to your messages. They insist on avoiding complications, but remember every detail you mention. This isn't indifference, this is terror of intensity. According to Freud, when the ID experiences romantic impulses so powerful they threaten the ego's equilibrium, the mind activates this protective mechanism. Love becomes perceived as dangerous because it implies loss of control, vulnerability, emotional dependence. The unconscious responds by creating surface behavior that appears to say, "You don't interest me," while actually every fiber of their being is magnetically drawn toward the love object. Observe carefully. This person might criticize your choices most, but also knows your preferences best. They might seem least interested in you publicly, but seek you most privately. Reaction formation is like clothing covering emotional nakedness. The thicker and more elaborate the garment, the more intense what it conceals. The paradox is, this mechanism often drives away the very person they love because surface signals get interpreted as disinterest. But Freud teaches us to look beyond. When someone seems to reject you but cannot let you go, when their words say one thing but actions say another, when their presence remains constant despite supposed indifference, then you're witnessing one of the purest unconscious forms of love. The second signal that someone is hopelessly infatuated with you happens when they begin seeing confirmations of your interest, even where none exist. Freud called this mechanism projection, where the unconscious attributes one's own feelings and desires to another person, making unrequited love bearable. Imagine smiling politely at this person during normal conversation. For you, it's simple courtesy, but they interpret it as a special signal, a hidden message confirmation that you also feel something. If you respond quickly to their message, it means you were waiting to hear from them. If you delay, it means you're playing hard to get, but actually interested. Every action becomes confirmation of their secret theory that you're also in love. From a Freudian perspective, this projection serves to protect the ego from the devastating possibility that love is one-sided. The unconscious prefers creating a parallel reality where feelings are mutual rather than confronting the emptiness of indifference. It's as if the psyche declares, if I feel this, then you must feel it too, because otherwise the pain would be unbearable. This person will begin constructing elaborate narratives around your encounters. That moment of silence during conversation wasn't awkwardness, it was complicity. That distracted look wasn't absent-mindedness, it was longing. That time you chose to sit beside them wasn't coincidence, it was desire for closeness. The infatuated becomes a love detective, finding clues in the most innocent gestures. The mechanism is as powerful as it is dangerous. On one hand, it allows the infatuated to survive emotionally by feeding hope. On the other, it can lead to dramatic misunderstandings and invasive behaviors. Freud observed that projection intensifies with desperate love. The more someone fears rejection, the more their unconscious seeks contrary evidence. Recognize this pattern when someone interprets every kindness as romantic interest, when they seem to read secret messages in every word, when they construct imaginary love stories based on completely normal interactions. Then their unconscious is working frantically to protect love too immense to be consciously accepted. The third signal that someone is profoundly in love with you occurs when they begin personal transformation that seems inexplicable from outside. Freud called this process sublimation, where libidinal energy gets channeled into creative activities, self-improvement, and achievements, all sharing one hidden common denominator: you. Imagine someone normally sedentary suddenly starting to exercise, not from vanity, but because unconsciously they want to become better for you. Or someone who never showed artistic interest begins painting, writing, poetry, learning instruments. Even more subtle, they start reading books about subjects you're passionate about, frequenting places you love, developing skills that might impress you. According to Freud, when love is so intense, it cannot be expressed directly. The unconscious finds alternative channels. Sexual and romantic energy transforms into creative and growth impulses. But attention, this isn't conscious manipulation. It's the psyche, desperately seeking ways to become worthy of the love object, to become interesting in their eyes, to create emotional bridges without explicit declarations. Amorous sublimation has specific characteristics. First, it's sudden and inexplicable. The person changes consolidated habits without apparent reason. Second, it's oriented toward what might please you. If you love art, they become artistic. If you love culture, they become cultured. If you love sports, they become athletic. Third, it's accompanied by exceptional energy, as if love provides inexhaustible fuel for change. Freud observed that this sublimation is often more lasting and profound than love itself. Skills acquired, passions developed, transformations undergone for love remain even when love ends. It's as if the unconscious knows that regardless of relationship outcome, this improvement process has intrinsic value. But there's an even more revealing aspect when this person shows you their new creation skills or transformations. They do so with particular vulnerability. It's not simple pride in achievements, it's the unconscious seeking approval from the love object, presenting sublimated gifts, hoping for recognition and emotional connection. Recognize this signal when someone begins improvement journeys, mysteriously aligned with your tastes and values, when they become suddenly creative or productive in previously unthinkable ways, when they seem to flourish as people precisely during the period you've known each other, then you're witnessing love sublimation, according to Freud. The fourth signal that someone is desperately in love with you occurs when they start creating recurring coincidences to encounter you. Freud called this behavior repetition compulsion, where the unconscious obsessively recreates situations, permitting contact with the love object, masking desire behind coincidence. Imagine this person beginning to frequent your same places: the cafe, where you breakfast, the gym, where you train, the park, where you run, the supermarket, where you shop. Initially it seems strange, but they always have plausible justification. I live nearby, someone recommended this place, it was on my way. The Freudian reality differs. The unconscious has mapped your routine and is orchestrating encounters that seem casual but aren't. According to Freud, this compulsion stems from devastating internal conflict. The id desperately desires closeness, but the ego fears direct approach rejection. The compromise creates situations where encounters seem inevitable, natural, unintentional. This way the person can nourish love without exposing themselves to conscious rejection risk. But compulsion extends beyond physical locations. This person will begin being present in all social contexts where you might be. If you mention a party, they'll know someone who'll invite them. If you discuss an event, they'll suddenly discover interest in that same topic. If you change habits, they'll change theirs accordingly always, with apparently logical justifications. The pattern becomes obsessive because every casual encounter provides satisfaction dose, temporarily relieving unexpressed love anguish. But like every compulsion, it requires increasingly larger doses. Encounters must become more frequent, longer, more meaningful. The unconscious becomes invisible director writing one-sided love story. Freud noted this compulsion is particularly revealing because it goes against rationality. A normal person would avoid potentially embarrassing situations, but the infatuated actively seeks them. The need for closeness surpasses common sense logic. Even when casual encounters become evidently intentional, compulsion continues because the unconscious prefers embarrassment risk to absence emptiness. There's a tragic aspect to this mechanism. It often drives away the very person they love, who begins feeling persecuted or under surveillance. But for the infatuated, stopping is impossible, because interrupting compulsion would mean confronting devastating separation emptiness. Recognize this signal when someone seems to materialize everywhere you go with always different but never entirely convincing explanations, when the casualness of your encounters becomes statistically impossible, when they seem to know your schedule better than you, then you're observing love's repetition compulsion, according to Freud. The fifth signal that someone is profoundly in love with you happens when they begin becoming similar to you without realizing it. Freud called this process identification, where the unconscious absorbs love object characteristics to reduce psychological distance and create symbolic union. Imagine someone who never showed coffee interest suddenly becoming blend expert, just like you. Or someone who spoke directly begins adopting your expressions, your way of laughing, even your characteristic gestures. This isn't conscious imitation, it's the unconscious seeking to merge with the love object through similarity. According to Freud, identification is one of the psyche's most primitive and powerful mechanisms. When we love someone so intensely, we want to lose ourselves in that person. The unconscious literally begins psychologically devouring them, incorporating their parts to feel them always near. It's as if the mind declares, "If I cannot have you, I'll become you." This process always begins with apparently insignificant details. The infatuated will start listening to your music even if they previously had completely different tastes. They'll adopt your linguistic expressions without noticing. They'll begin dressing in colors you love. They'll suddenly develop interest in your hobbies. They'll even change eating habits to approach your preferences. But identification goes much deeper than superficial behaviors. The infatuated will begin adopting your values, opinions, your worldview. If you're environmentalist, they'll become ecology sensitive. If you're spiritual, they'll begin inner growth journeys. If you're rational, they'll develop critical thinking. It's as if their personality reshapes using you as mold. The Freudian paradox is this identification born from love can lead to individuality loss. The infatuated becomes secondary version of beloved person, losing unique characteristics that made them interesting. It's self-destructive mechanism disguised as devotion. Freud observed identification intensifies when love is impossible or unrequited. If we cannot have the person, at least we can be like them. Its symbolic possession form, temporarily relieving separation pain, but creating profound psychological dependence. Recognize this signal by observing subtle changes when someone mysteriously begins resembling you in aspects previously foreign to their nature, when they adopt your characteristics without your ever having consciously taught them, when they seem to become a version of yourself you didn't know you were. Then you're witnessing unconscious love identification, according to Freud. Most disturbing is these changes often persist even after love ends, like permanent psychological scars from union that existed only in one person's unconscious. The sixth and final signal that someone is desperately in love with you occurs when they systematically deny every evidence that love isn't reciprocated. Freud considered denial the most primitive defense mechanism. The mind refuses to accept reality, too painful to process. Imagine having explicitly clarified to this person that you're not romantically interested. A rational mind would accept information and adapt. But the infatuated in denial will transform your rejection into confirmation. She says no because she's afraid to love. She's testing my feelings. She's actually shy, she's had bad experiences and protects herself. Every no becomes disguised yes in their interpretation. According to Freud, denial of unrequited love is psychic survival mechanism. Accepting rejection reality would mean confronting emotional devastation the ego perceives as lethal. It's literally more bearable living in illusion than facing truth. The unconscious prefers distorting reality rather than accepting narcissistic annihilation of rejection. This denial assumes increasingly elaborate forms disconnected from reality. If you avoid this person, it means you're fighting your feelings. If you're kind to them, it means you secretly love them. If you're cold, it means you're pretending to protect yourself. If you see other people, it means you're trying to make them jealous. There's no behavior that could convince them otherwise because the unconscious has created hermetic interpretation system. The mechanism becomes pathological when person begins seeing love signals, even in objectively negative situations. Your annoyance becomes repressed passion. Your request for space becomes seduction game. Even your anger gets interpreted as proof of how emotionally involved you are. It's as if they live in parallel reality, where all human communication laws are inverted. Freud noted this denial is often accompanied by manic energy. The person seems inexplicably confident, optimistic, even euphoric, despite all negative signals. It's the unconscious working frantically to maintain illusion-pumping endorphins to counteract depression that would emerge if truth were accepted. The tragic twist is this denial can last years, decades, sometimes forever. The infatuated construct's imaginary love story so detailed and convincing it becomes more real than reality itself. They live in relationship existing only in their mind, but for them authentic as any reciprocated love. Recognize this final signal when someone seems immune to your rejections, when they interpret every distancing attempt as contrary confirmation, when they live in reality version, where you two have special connection. Only they perceive when no evidence can convince them you don't love them, then you're observing love denial, according to Freud. It's the most powerful and dangerous signal because it indicates love so deep it has transcended reality boundaries. These unconscious mechanisms reveal love so intense it frightens the conscious mind, which must find indirect ways to express itself. But remember, recognizing these signals is only the beginning. The real question is, what will you do with this awareness? Which city are you watching from right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. It's always amazing to see how vast our community of human psyche explorers really is. Smash that like button if you found this fascinating and subscribe for more mind-bending psychology content that'll change how you see relationships forever.